Okay, welcome to this next episode where I'll guide you through the process of actually setting up your SMSF. Now, I do assume, having listened to the introductory episode, that you have made a decision either to or not to set up a SMSF. For those of you who have made a decision to set up a SMSF, this episode will guide you through what needs to be done in order to set one up. So the first step, you need to come up with a name of your superannuation fund. So for example, it can be ABC Superannuation Fund. Having determined the name, you then need to determine who will be the trustee of the super fund. Now, you would have come across the term trustee in relation to trusts, family trusts, investment trusts, and so on. Now, a super fund, especially an SMSF, it is like a trust, although the difference between this and a normal family trust or investment trust is that the funds or the money in your SMSF is not accessible until you retire or until you reach preservation age. Now, there's two types of trustees that you can have in your SMSF. One is what we call a corporate trustee, or simply a company trustee, or two, individual trustees. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of either of these, a company trustee and an individual trustee? Well, the individual trustee, unfortunately, has to bear all the liability, if any arises. And in terms of documentation, the individual would usually have a bank account in their own names. Now, the documentation will have to be in the name of the individual as trustee for ABC Superannuation Fund. However, having a company trustee separates the individual in terms of bearing liabilities and in terms of more asset protection in your SMSF. So we do recommend for these reasons each SMSF to have a company trustee. Now, it's not illegal to have an individual trustee, but there are legal issues that need to be considered very, very carefully before you choose to go down that pathway of having an individual trustee. The other thing to consider in terms of individual trustees is if you are the only person who will be the member of your SMSF, you have to have another person as a trustee. You cannot have just one individual acting as a trustee. On the other hand, if you have a company trustee, and if you are the only person, the only member in your SMSF, you can be the only director and shareholder and so on of your company trustee. And that's within the SIS rules. SIS regulations is Superannuation Industry Supervisory Regulations. So it's within the legal rules that if you are a individual, if you are the only member and you have a company trustee and you're the only director of the company trustee. Now, assuming that you have a spouse and one or two children, because an SMSF allows only up to 4 members. Now, there was some intention to have a SMSF to allow up to 6 members, but that bill has not passed, and so the SMSF has a maximum of 4 members. So, if you have a spouse and sons or daughters who you wish to have as members of the SMSF, they can also be individual trustees. Or if you wish to set up a company trustee, all of your members in the SMSF have to also be directors of the company trustee. That's the law in setting up an SMSF. Now, how to go about one? Let's say you've gone down the path of setting up a company trustee. You can perhaps call the company ABC Proprietary Limited. Then when you have the two formed, The actual name of your fund is ABC Pty Ltd as trustee for ABC Superannuation Fund. Now, how do you put all this together and form it? Well, there's two options. One, you can go to your accountant or tax agent and provide them all the information necessary for them to be able to guide you and set up your superannuation fund. Now, setup costs can range between around $1,000 and $2,000 depending on who you go to and depending on who does the work for you. If you have the brains, if you have the mind in order to do that on your own and save the costs, there are websites out there that provide the service of setting up your SMSF. One website that we recommend is trustdeed.com.au. That enables you to set up a SMSF with a corporate trustee, all in one lump sum charge. And it's a one-off charge, which is considerably cheaper than if you were to go to an accountant who will charge you a lot of money. However, your accountant will save you time and will save you all the hassles of putting together all the information for you. And in turn, your accountant and yourself will have a good working relationship, and your accountant will also prepare your annual accounts and tax return. We'll get to that shortly. So if you decide to set up your SMSF on your own, you can go to one of those websites that provide this service, put in all of your information, all the individual's informations from first names to surname, date of birth, address, and so on. Put down the name of your proposed company trustee, who the directors and shareholders will be in that company trustee. And then after putting all this information in, you will have a choice to apply for an ABN and a TFN using that same service. Now, a superannuation fund, an SMSF, does have to have an ABN as required by the superannuation laws. And it is required to have ABN, Australian Business Number, and it is required to have a TFN, tax file number, for lodging its annual tax return. Now, having done all of these things, you've put all the information together, you've applied for an ABN and a TFN. You can also state who your tax agent will be, or you can leave it blank if you don't know that yet. So having put all this information together, you then submit your details to the website. Let's say we're using trustdeed.com.au. You make a payment, and that payment goes to the provider. It goes to ASIC as well, Australian Securities and Investment Commission, because they take a registration fee for the setup of the company. Now, having done all of that, you will then be provided with what we call a trust deed for your SMSF, which enables you to invest in any particular asset groups, any particular assets you wish to invest in order to provide you with the maximum benefit upon retirement. So you will then also have all your super fund documents and the documents in relation to your trustee company. So your trustee company you will receive your company constitution, the certificate of registration, and the minutes of the shareholders and directors and so on of the trustee company. Now, bear in mind, with a trustee company of the SMSF, this company will only act for the purpose of being a trustee for the SMSF, and it cannot trade in its own capacity. So it will not require an ABN or a TFN. And the good thing about a trustee company is the annual fees payable to ASIC is somewhere in the range of about $55. Whereas a normal company trading in its own capacity, or if it's a trustee for another trust, its annual ASIC registration fee will be in the range of around about $270. So you can see the significant difference there between a trustee company of a normal trust and a trustee company of a SMSF. Of course, if you have individuals acting as trustees, you won't be paying any annual registration fees to ASIC for that. Now I've taken you through the steps in setting up your SMSF and details of what you need to provide. In the next episode, I'll be talking to you about how to bring the money into your SMSF and how to add extra money into your SMSF. So stay tuned.